Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition, vacation edition. I am Braden Gall. That is Nick Suss. Nick Suss actually on vacation at time of taping. I will leave for vacation this afternoon, so vacation edition. But Titans training camp gets started next week, so I thought we'd have a little fun. Paul and I did the serious version of this show, Nick, the very serious version on Monday, where we predicted all the most important storylines in Titans training camp, the ones we're most interested in, and the ones we think that are going to have the biggest impact on the team. However, today we're going to predict all the most meaningless and ridiculous and absurd and not important storylines that will arise out of training camp over the next few weeks and will dominate your timeline, your algorithm, and your feed. Soon, sure to go completely haywire in just a matter of weeks. So, Nick, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm here. I'm happy, refreshed. I hope it looks like I've gotten a little bit of sun, but it doesn't. It doesn't, does it? Like I have been over.
It might be the lighting. It's the lighting.
It's some of the lighting. It has more to do with like I've been overprotecting with sunscreen, and so no sun has penetrated whatsoever. Like I'm not going to feel uncomfortable here.
Yeah, you're getting old when you're like zero sun must hit my skin while I'm sitting in the sun. Like you're getting old. Obviously, SEC Media Days is going on as well. I will ask. I've got sort of an absurd storyline from SEC Media Days that will tie in perfectly with our Titans conversation about the future. I will give you my predicted order of finish if you want to know. If you want to jump into the comment section, please do so. Jake, good to see you already. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up, notifications turned on. Share the product on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as if you're listening to the podcast app of choice, please give us a review. That's how people find us. Talk about the Titans and SEC and Nick's Geek Corner and all this great stuff. So make sure you write a good review. 5 stars only. If you do not give us 5 stars, Eddie, you are a hater. All right, Sinkers.
Let's quite before we get into this, the 2 comments we've gotten so far. Guess which one of those 2 is in England or is in the UK? Because they both came with UK slang. But Jake. That is just Jake. The lads threw me off. I'm like, I know one of them. Are you both UK based?
Well, I think Jake is actually there because like right now it's 3 p.m.
Yeah,
or 4 p.m. I think it's 7 hours ahead London time.
Jake, I do not know if you're Welsh, but I read that in a Welsh accent, so I hope you're Welsh.
What's the difference in Gareth Bale and Harry Kane accents?
I'm not going to do them. I'm not going to insult the Welsh.
I didn't ask you to do them. I'm asking what the difference is. It seems like they're very subtle. Irish and Scottish, very different. So we shall see. All right, there's your United Kingdom, British Isles vocal analysis for the week. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Boys Barbecue. Do appreciate both those great sponsors. Of course, Sinkers Beverages, 40th birthday party coming up August 9th on a Saturday. $10 tickets. All the money goes to charity. Booze, drinks, giveaways, food, music. I don't know what else you need to know. $10 only. Come on out and have fun. We're gonna have a good time. BasementEast.com. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Are you speaking of? I'm watching a sporting event take place in Ireland, Northern Ireland right now, actually. So
cool.
Got it on the tube. So there you go. Yep, 1500. And I'm not Welsh. 1 hour outside of London. That a boy, Jake.
1500 hours, I would imagine. Whatever time that is in.
1500 is 3 o'clock. Yeah. 6 hours ahead is what I thought. By the way, I went to London last year with my wife, and my phone has not changed off of military time in over a year. I'm still military time.
Showing that example didn't work because it's still 9.
Well, it says 0, but it says 09.
Okay.
The military has the 0 there.
Okay.
So. Anyway, I realized that as I was doing it, but thank you for calling it out. I do appreciate that.
Let's stop talking about dumb things and start talking about dumb things. It's time for dumb training camp stuff.
Come on, you Gunners. Let's talk about the EPL transfer window. Let's do that. Okay. So there's one storyline above all the other storylines that is like it's still all over the national conversation, which I understand how timelines and algorithms work, and the national conversation isn't on the ground. They're not going to know exactly what's happening inside the building and in the locker room, and they're not at camp watching practice and watching reps. They see reps being split, and the number one most overrated, most absurd, most ridiculous storyline, and I've complained about this before, and I imagine that with one really good day of practice from Will Levis and one really bad rep, not even a bad day of practice, Nick, just one bad rep from Cam Ward, and the national conversation will instantaneously be asking questions about why Brian Callahan has not named a starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. And I cannot think of another conversation that we are going to have during training camp that will be more ridiculous then why is Cam Ward not the starter and splitting reps with Will Levis? Is there a chance that Will Levis could be the starter? Question mark.
I think that's going to be exhausting. But I think that equally exhausting will be the should Will Levis be the starter conversation. Like, they're going to be running parallel to each other of the should it be Brandon Allen? Should it be Will Levis? Should somebody give Cam the chance to rest? Parallel to the, well, why haven't they named him? There must be a reason he's not named the starter. There must, like, that at the same time is going to take up such an inordinate amount of our time.
All the oxygen.
We all know the outcome. Like,
do we?
We all know what is going to happen with the Titans quarterback position long term. So even if short term there is a 1 to 5% chance that it's not that guy, long term it's that guy. So we can't fall down the rabbit hole of one good practice or one good month of practice. Let's hypothetically say Brandon Allen comes out and doesn't let the ball hit the ground. Nothing but touchdowns. Looks like Brett Favre. If that happens, we can't distract ourselves from the fact that the Titans just drafted this guy number 1 overall. Like, fundamentally, what's going to happen is that sooner or later, Cam Ward is going to be this team's quarterback. I'm betting on sooner. I think most educated people are betting on sooner, but like, let's not lose the forest for the trees.
1 to 5% chance. So let's explore that number for a second. Let's just really get into standard deviation here. If there is, are you including injury into that 1 to 5% chance?
You're making the fool's errand of thinking I thought before I said something.
Well, no, because here's what I would do. Aside from an injury, that means he cannot play football. I think there is a 0% chance that Cam Ward is not the starting quarterback in week 1.
Sure.
So
again,
make your case for 1 to 5%.
I agree with you. I think he's the starter. I think anyone thinks he's a starter. But I will never speak in certitudes, and you know that about me. The only thing that I won't say certainly is that I won't say anything certainly. So
with certainty or certitudes, what's the word? What's the word?
I think certitudes is a word.
Did you make that up?
I think it's a word. Fact check me in the comments. Certitudes.
No,
it's a word.
Get your spousal producer to double check that for us.
Nah, she's playing word games on her phone. I'm not going to make her look up words. She already knows I make up words.
That's true. You do.
We've already gotten Queen Bee on the spelling bee this morning. We've knocked it out. We've did this whole thing.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. We got every word.
So we got a couple other good suggestions in the comments. If you would like to present what you believe to be one of the most absurd, ridiculous, and meaningless storylines that will take over your TLDR, let's drop it in there. I think so. There's also other parts of this quarterback conversation, which is the Will Levis trade conversation, which I think is actually interesting. I don't know if it has any impact on the team long term. So I don't know how, like, while it is interesting and it is slightly less absurd. It's more just sort of like, is Brandon Allen the better type of backup for Cam Ward? Is Will Levis good enough to be traded somewhere else? That's all meaningful stuff. It doesn't have any, to me, and I've said this all summer, I don't think it should have any impact on the outcome of the season. And if it does, we've already lost the thread on the season because Cam Ward's not playing, and that's got to be a serious problem. So I don't know how that works into this, but I think to your point about them running parallel, I think that's what's going to happen is there's a, if Cam Ward has one bad red zone situation and Will Levis has an elite practice, all of a sudden the conversation is going to sort of blossom into 3 or 4 other conversations.
Yeah. And look, we went through this last summer with Malik Willis. I don't think that anybody fully thought trade was the 100% option. I think it was a possibility. I think now we might be overstating the possibility with Will because we saw it last summer with Malik. I think it's still a high possibility. I think they will try to move him if a team has an injury at backup quarterback or doesn't look as strong there as they thought they did or wants to bet on a piece that they can develop into the future. Like, I do think there's a strong possibility of this. But let's not, again, now that Eddie is factoring in that it is a word, I'll use it again. Let's not speak in certitudes. Let's say that it is likely, it is a possibility, but let's also just watch to see how good he is.
Yeah.
There is value in having a talented young backup quarterback, and Brian Callahan has said in the past that his preferred method of backup quarterback is developmental. Like, he was speaking more about practice squad than he was about number 2, but like having a developmental quarterback on roster is something he would prefer to have than Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're done making moves at quarterback would be my point there.
I tend to agree with that as well. So that's their first. Now you guys get the gist. You get the gist of what we're doing here. Storylines that take over our conversation but mean very, very little. Just this bizarre, disproportionate amount of attention to something that means very, very little. So we'll get to all of that. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Shout out to Shotgun Willie's, of course, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. Just 10 minutes from downtown, the official barbecue of the Houston Oilers. And they have really good merch. They got that Love You Blue merch up there, which looks like Titans gear, but it's really kind of like Oilers gear. So, but he hates the Texans too. So like, you can support him. It's totally fine. 11 to 3, as I said, Wednesday through Sunday. By the way, next week, I'll have a special episode since I'm on vacation. Special episode on Monday's edition of A Football Show. We're going to predict the 53-man roster, and it will be with a surprise cameo from somebody else outside of Paul Karski. So stay tuned for that. And then Nick and I will be back on Friday, a day later, as we've got a couple of days of camp, and then we'll be live on Friday morning. So
we'll have to figure out the time because there might be practice during the window Friday morning. So
I believe I was told by PR that Friday is closed practice, but we shall see.
We'll have to figure out a schedule when we figure out a schedule.
We shall see. But, exactly right. Just wanted to let everybody know, that's taking place coming up next week. All right, number 2, and we were asked about this on Monday on a Monday show. That Femi's they were asked about Femi and Winston's contracts and how much that's going to matter. And I think the real gist of this is that they're slotted, and they're slotted for the exact reason we're discussing, which is that they don't become issues. It's not going to become an issue. It's just a matter of sort of the entire league and all of the agents that have all the players drafted in that range, sort of figuring out exactly the guarantees or whatever. It's not a big deal. But first day of practice, if he's not either out there, can he practice without a contract? I don't know if he can. But if he's either not out there because the contract hasn't been signed, where's Femi's motivation? What's Femi thinking? Does he care about the team? Is he a me player? Is he too selfish? You can see that one taken over and how it means almost nothing for Femi Oladejo's career in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't want to overstate or understate the importance of practicing. Like, we all agree that practicing matters and development matters. We all also agree that this is not about Femi, that this is a league-wide thing, that this is a player-driven labor movement that says nothing about any individual player's willingness to participate. We know he's had an entire off season to learn the system, to be in the weight room, to ingratiate himself with his coaches and teammates. Whenever he gets out there, he will begin practicing. And look, we all understand that this Titans defensive front doesn't necessarily need to revolve around Femi day one. So if he's not out there, if he's a couple of weeks behind, the rotation is still built around Draymond Jones and Arden Key and Lorenzo Carter and Jalen Harrell. And not to say that Femi is behind all of those guys. I would be surprised if he's not second, third, fourth on the depth chart by the time the season starts. But this is not a gigantic, the world is going to end if he misses a week of practice situation. And you can also
wait, it's not?
No, I don't think it is.
Okay, good.
And I also we see young players miss a week of practice in training camp all the time. Sometimes it's sequentially first. Sometimes there's an injury and you want to protect them against it. It just is a thing that happens. Yep. So like, I am not going to mountainize this molehill of if he misses all of training camp, if he does not sign a contract, that's a problem.
Right.
But like, that would be a league-wide problem that no second-round pick has signed a contract.
Right.
Like, if no one picked between 33 and 64 signs a contract, if we only get two or three of them, that's a huge, huge problem. But like,
for the NFL, not for the Titans.
Yeah. But like, I don't know. I think that if the league breaks where it breaks and he ends up missing a week or two of practice, not the biggest deal.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that one will be out of That one will be out of control as well and easily predictable. All right. What else is on our list here? Because I know we've got Josh is kind of getting us into this conversation.
Let's start there.
So
let's move there.
Josh says last receiver on the team is always a popular conversation. Jake says something around the offensive line and Bertha beating players and therefore no O-line again. Let's see. I'm making sure I don't have. Let's see. Okay, those are the comments that kind of tie into what we're going to talk about here, which is so here's an example. Here's a perfect example. Austin says, "Does Snead play another snap with the Titans?" That is a storyline that is important.
That matters. That matters a lot.
They gave up a draft pick and a lot of money to go sign a number one corner who has barely been seen as a human being in Nashville, Tennessee, on a field during a game at practice in the facility. And so while the amount of practice reps for Snead may not matter if he's available all 17 games this regular season, Brian Callahan has made it an issue by saying we expect him to be more available and more visible on the practice field. So that's an example of Austin that I think we can point out here as no, that's the one that could become a storyline that might get a little blown out of proportion, but also it still does matter his L'Jarius Sneed's availability.
Yeah, I don't really know if there is a way to blow the Snead situation out of proportion at this point. That is 1A fundamentally the most important thing for the Titans in training camp to me. Your defense does not work the way it's supposed to if you do not have that guy at corner and he's not playing up to his ability. Because the design of this defense kind of heavily relies on aggressive corners making plays because you don't have that overwhelmingly dominant pass rush off the edge. So what you need is top flight cornerback play. And I'm not saying Snead is the guy he was 2-3 years ago. He might be, he might not be. We have not seen him play. But what I am saying is his promise, his potential is still higher than a 6th round rookie or an undrafted free agent or a guy like Daryl Baker or Gabe Giudice, who we saw last year, who still have room to grow, still can develop, but we wouldn't expect them to develop to the place that Snead's baseline should be. So let's talk about the stuff. We're going to talk a lot about Snead and it's not going to be hot air. We're going to have a lot to say about Snead all throughout training camp.
And I'll add Lloyd Cushenberry into this. Lloyd Cushenberry is the exact same version of this. How available is he? How healthy he is absolutely matters. It is an important conversation. We're going to spend a lot of time on it. That's not one that falls into this absurd, sort of ridiculous conversation at all.
But let's go back to the last man on the O-line, last man in the receiving corps.
Yes.
Because I think this is the thing that, if you guys have read my coverage over the last 3 training camps, and you will continue to read it this year, one of the things that always gets to me is how much attention we give to players 49 to 53 on the roster. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out who players 49 to 53 on the roster are. If you guys recall, on NFL Sundays, players 49 through 53 on the roster, not active. Not active. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about swing tackle. And I am not going to say that we shouldn't. It is important to understand, what happens if somebody gets injured? Who's your next best option? This, that. When we're talking about the 4th tackle to make the team, if we are working under the presumption that Dan Moore and J.C. Latham and Blake Hance will all be there, and then we're talking about option number 4.
Say those again.
Dan Moore, J.C. Latham, Blake Hance.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So then after that, we are working on, is it John Ojukwu? Is it Jalen Duncan? Is it Brandon Crenshaw Dixon? Is it Oli Udoh? Is it Sam Mustipher, who's going to play on the inside? But when we're talking about the 4th option at tackle, or the receiver equivalent of this, when we're talking about potentially the number 7 option at wide receiver.
Well, let me give you my list real fast, just as a hypothetical here.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. Bryce Oliver, Sam Mustipher, David Martin Robinson, Marcus Harris, Curtis Jacobs. Those could be 5 players that are 49 through 53 on cut down day.
And we're going to talk so much about those guys because being on the bubble is interesting. March Madness season. We talk so much.
Did Hard Knocks do this to us?
I don't know. I think that Twitter did this to us. I think that live updates of practice and the internet machine that allows us to put a projected 53 every day probably did this to us.
Fair.
Hard Knocks might have helped or hurt. I don't know.
It glorified the last cuts. It certainly did. There's no question.
And now that there's 1 cut day instead of 3 cut days, it definitely does add to the dramatics. But I love position battles. And if we're talking about the difference between starter and backup, if we're going back to who wins that spot next to Cody Barton, there's interest there because this is a guy who's ostensibly going to play 1 out of every 3 downs, 1 out of every 2 downs. Like he's going to be on the field a lot.
Tight end is a fascinating battle. Fascinating.
So if we're talking about Chig versus Helm there, for your example, fascinating. If we're talking about some of the corner spots of where does McCreary fit in, where does Brownlee fit in, if Snead's not out there, who's that number 3? Like these are really important. Yeah. If we're talking about who is your 4th offensive tackle, you need a 4th offensive tackle. I love offensive tackle play. It is fascinating to me. But we know who the starters are. And we've got a pretty strong idea of who the backup is going to be. This last guy on the roster, we're going to spend way too much time talking about it because we're going to get bored about knowing who the starters are. We've known the starting offensive line since like March 18th. Yeah. Like it has been a lot of like, well, that's going to be it. And we're going to try and think of new things to talk about because we get bored just being like, well, Dan Moore's the left tackle. But I hate to break it to you, Dan Moore's the left tackle.
Yeah. And again, this goes to the kind of the similar situation with Cam Ward to some degree, which is like, if it really does actually matter, if they chose John Ojukwu or Jalen Duncan, you got bigger problems. There's bigger problems. That's not the main problem. That's not the thing that is the concern. There are like 3 other concerns, which could be any number of things, which could be Bill Callahan and Bertha and the training. It could be Dan Moore's inability. It could be somebody's health. It could be a lot of things, but it's not going to matter which one of those 2 guys you end up picking. Now, receivers different because of fantasy football, gambling, prop bets, video. To your point about social media, and you don't really see a lot of great, engaging video that goes viral of offensive linemen doing like pass pro sets against air. But you love watching receivers, and so receivers, every fantasy position is always going to get more coverage. So I think receivers clearly a part of this. Now, to be fair, I think nickel corner, 4th, 5th, 6th corner, they do play more than your 10th offensive lineman. Your 5th or 6th receiver could, in theory, play more than your 10th offensive lineman. Middle linebacker, I don't know. 4th middle linebacker versus 5th middle linebacker. I don't think that matters too much. But there are plenty of really interesting position battles that we could talk about, and should spend time on, and they won't really involve, an undrafted free agent out of Florida trying to make it as a 5th tackle on the roster. It's just not that important. Now, we should separate one guy though from this conversation.
Speaking of undrafted free agents from the state of Florida, there's one name we've been dancing around.
So that brings us to Xavier Restrepo, which is a different name to some degree. Now, I'm torn on this truly because I don't think he matters to the Tennessee Titans' success or failure this year. I just don't. Now, I think he can make the team. I'm kind of coming around on the fact that I think he would be a good punt returner. PK disagrees in that you need to have straight line speed to be a great punt returner. I don't think you do. I think you need to have the ability to get like 12 yards when really you should only get 8, right? Like you should create that extra first down for your offense. That's what a great punt returner does, not score twice instead of 1 time in the entire season. So I do see value if he's a perfect slot receiver and he can start. There is something there. What I'm curious about though, Nick, is can you take anything, and maybe this is me leading into the ridiculousness here, about Cam Ward? Is there any thread that says, well, Cam stood on the table for Xavier Restrepo and he was terrible, didn't make the team, and that's an indictment of Cam, or something insane like that could tie the decision to bring Restrepo in to some other ability or talent? Does that make sense?
I think that when I talk about the Restrepo stuff is going to be overblown, that part matters, but the part that's going to feel overblown to me is practice production. Because specifically, we're going to expect to see Xavier Restrepo primarily working against number 2 and number 3 and number 4 defenses. And generally speaking, the number 2, number 3 offense should have an advantage against the number 2, number 3 defense. Just because the offense knows where it's going and we're playing 7-on-7 and there's no pads, and like just generally speaking, you're going to be like, wow, Xavier Restrepo had 9 catches this week. The dude is productive. He's really, really good. Your number 6 receiver is like uniquely positioned to have a great training camp, no matter who it is. Last year, it was Bryce Oliver, who had a great training camp.
Jaquan Jackson got a lot of
Jaquan Jackson had a great training camp. Like, that sort of thing is positioned to happen. The whole thing for Restrepo is going to be, can the Titans afford to keep a backup receiver who can only play one receiver position? Because if he's a special teams ace, great. But we have to really, really see that. We have to see him go out in joint practices against Tampa and Atlanta and be a gnat and like pester these guys as a gunner or as a punt returner or whatever it is.
I could see him doing that strangely.
I could see it too, because he's a work ethic guy. Yeah. He's got all the stuff you like from him. Yeah. But even if you keep him as a 6th receiver, the question you're asking yourself is, well, if he needs to go in the game on offense, can he? Who are we taking off the field? Are we taking Tyler Lockett off the field? Are we expecting Tyler Lockett to be on the field? Yeah. It gets a strange... It's a tough position because the connection to Cam is important.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
It's tricky, and that needs to be factored in. But you also can count on your quarterback building connection with receivers. You would imagine that.
Austin says, would we have heard by now that he has such an undeniable on-field relationship with Ward? I think we have. Have we not?
I think we have.
Yeah, I think we have. Like, their connection at Miami is well documented, I feel like.
Their connection at Miami was well documented.
The reason he's here, he's not on the Tennessee Titans if not for the connection. To be honest, right? Like,
I think that's a huge factor. But
wherever Cam Ward was getting drafted was where Xavier Restrepo was going to sign.
Sure.
That's what I feel like.
But we also have to acknowledge that for as undeniable as this connection is, they forged it in about 6 months. Like,
in college,
yeah. Cam Ward did not spend 4 years playing with Restrepo. He got there as a transfer in January, I guess, February, and was throwing touchdowns to him by September
in game 1 against Florida. Yeah.
So
Austin, we're referring to the pro conversation here. It starts in Miami, it begins in Miami, and the reason he is here in Nashville, in my opinion, at all in the first place, is because of Cam Ward. I think that connection is very well documented in the pros.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't had games to discuss it, but or to see if it's real or not, or to even see if he makes the team. But the reason we have to take Xavier Restrepo out of the position battle conversation we just had, and he gets his own category on this show, is because of the connection to Cam Ward.
Yeah,
like I think it's kind of baked into the existence of the conversation in the first place. If that makes sense. Random question here from Eddie, and this is sort of a non sequitur, but future question. Are they looking to give him a career extension this year? Do you have any idea on that one? I could see it as long as it's a decent number, but I could see him asking for a bigger number than he deserves. So
yeah, it's one of those things where I can't say for certain. I've mixed signals from people you talk to, but I would say there is a trend line of which people have been getting contracts and which people haven't been getting contracts, and people from the previous regime have not been getting contracts.
And by previous regime, you don't mean Vrabel, or you mean Carthon? Which one are you talking about?
All
of the above.
Like, it's tough.
Robinson. Yeah.
So I don't know for certain that means Roger will not get a contract. I am not as out on Roger as some people are. I think Roger is a darn good number 3 corner. How much money should you give a number 3 corner? I really don't know. But I think there is a lot of talent there. I think there is a lot of value in a guy who can tackle pretty well, who can move well in space, who plays up well around the line of scrimmage, who can succeed around slot guys. Like I'm not sitting here saying he's going to be Jalen Ramsey or Richard Sherman or any of these guys, but if the number's right, I think they should consider it. It's just a matter of, do they think that nickel corner is something you can get for cheaper? Do they want Brownlee to eventually migrate to nickel corner? Like, there's a lot of considerations that they have to play through. So that's why I'll keep it at mixed signals for now.
Yeah, I agree with that. A couple more comments here back to Restrepo after that non sequitur. Jason says, if he's all comparable to Tyler Lockett, which I'm telling you he is not, because Lockett isn't long for the Titans, you got to keep Restrepo. I think Lockett's here for the season, unless he gets hurt, and I don't think he's close to Lockett. Also, Lockett ran 75% of his routes and got 75% of his targets not in the slot last year.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance Lockett is not even your slot receiver at all. And Austin says, do we know if it's translated yet to the Titans? And you're sort of proving our point here, Austin, to some degree. And I'm not picking on you here, but you're kind of proving the point, which is that you're still interested in some of the dynamics around this one player who is largely irrelevant to the future of the Tennessee Titans.
But
I think it had no, hang on. The reason it is a topic, the reason he is in Titans training camp is because of the connection. And the reason he made any catches or any plays is because of the connection. He is literally on another team, if not for Cam Ward, in my opinion. And we don't know if DK or Ayumanner or Restrepo on just a regular rookie analysis. We have no idea if any of their skills translate to the NFL until we see them in games. So it's not about it's not about like how good are you going to be, because how good are you going to be is predicated. No NFL player's success or failure is predicated on their relationship to another player. It's based on, are they good enough to play? To me, the reason he is here is because of the relationship. And that's all we can go on right now, because we don't have OTAs and minicamp don't give you any sense of like, okay, we think he's a little thick-legged and maybe he runs a little slow, but like he looks like he could take some hits in the slot and could return punts. Like all we kind of know is just basic observational analysis of his game. I don't know if that makes, I don't know if that answers his question or not, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll say three things. Thing number one, I feel fairly confident that the Titans view Tyler Lockett as a slot. I know you say there's a possibility he's not a slot. He's a slot.
Right.
Like he's going to play in the slot.
Especially with Jefferson and Ayumanner's ability to play outside. Like that makes sense.
Thing number two, look, I'm going to defend Austin here and say, I think that the interest in Restrepo is merited because of the relationship. But I still think that the reason it's overblown is because he's not going to be higher than the number 6 receiver. So I am not going to ever say there should not be interest in the Ward-Restrepo relationship. Because we have seen throughout the last 5-6 years of the NFL that if you are Jamar Chase, who is the best receiver in the NFL, if you are Devontae Smith, who is one of the 10 best receivers in the NFL, if you are Jalen Waddle, who's probably a top 20 receiver in the NFL, having a built-in quarterback-receiver relationship with a guy you played college with, there is value in that. And if Cam Ward can elevate Restrepo and you can find a place to make him a developmental receiver to get him to that number 3-4 receiver option next year, there's value in that. It's just going to be really tough because they've made moves to bring in 4 wide receivers this offseason beyond Restrepo. And we have another complicating factor that we're going to talk about later. And then third thing, which is irrelevant to anyone but you and I, but I just noticed it while we were talking, you got the year wrong in the title of this video.
Oh, man. That's a big bummer. That's a big bummer.
Sorry to have like weird.
Why'd you do that?
I don't know.
Why'd you call me out on that?
I was just on a roll.
We're gonna try something. We're gonna try something in real time. See if this works.
There we go.
See if it works. There we go. It works while we're live. How about that?
Hell yeah.
Austin continues. Who would be worth more in a trade, Spears or Burks? And my answer is no.
But let's segue. That's a good segue.
My answer is no. So Treylon Burks is also a player who gets his own category because, in a different way, but similarly to Restrepo, his existence on this earth is largely irrelevant to the Tennessee Titans. If they can get a 7th round pick for Treylon Burks, great, awesome. That means largely nothing in the NFL to the Tennessee Titans. If he is the 6th receiver on the team and he makes the team because he's healthy, super great. Like I'm glad that he's been given a chance to re-earn his way back into the 6th spot on the roster. Great. I don't think that impacts the Tennessee Titans in any way, shape, or form. If he is cut from the roster, it is an indictment of John Robinson and the previous regime, no one that is currently making any decisions for the Tennessee Titans, and means largely nothing for the Tennessee Titans. But Treylon Burks will get outsized coverage no matter what he does and no matter what happens to him at the end of training camp. And it's just not that important. It's just not that important to the Tennessee Titans long term
or
short term.
And I will hand to my heart, I'm probably going to contribute to the outside coverage in Treylon Burks.
Yes.
I am fascinated by Treylon Burks.
Just put your hand up and be self-aware, and I'm good with it.
I was fascinated by the Caleb Farley saga last season. I am going to be fascinated by the Treylon Burks saga.
I'm more interested in Colton Dowell.
Colton Dowell's interesting. I'm not saying he's not interesting, but when you have somebody who has kind of crumbled under the weight of expectation, and the Farley saga was so much different because there was a tragic element and there were pre-existing elements, and it was messy. But Treylon, it's just dude keeps getting hurt, and when he's out there, he doesn't produce very well. It is not as...
He falls so hard. Like, he hits the ground harder than anybody out there.
It is not as cinematic of a story as the story of Caleb Farley. But nevertheless, the nexus point, the turning point of Tennessee Titans football in the last decade is Treylon Burks. He is the key to understanding everything. Why Cam Ward is here, why Brian Callahan is here, why everything about the Tennessee Titans is the way it is right now. Treylon Burks is the key.
Through no fault of his own.
Through no fault of his own.
Right.
But watching him and seeing what he symbolizes will continue to be fascinating. If we're talking about from a high and mighty, it's not important because all we really care about is what's going to happen on September 8th. Like, yes, you're right. Like, fundamentally, Treylon Burks probably does not matter there.
Did you just call me high and mighty?
I'm calling us high and mighty.
Oh, okay.
I'm calling us sitting up on our thrones, talking at people, saying this is what actually matters. And if you care about this, you know what? We don't want you to listen anymore. We want you to
Austin, shut it.
Even if you care about this, good.
Sorry.
You should care about things. But like, from a human element of what football matters, Treylon Burks is fascinating to me. From how much does this matter to the Tennessee Titans? Yeah, he's on this list for a reason.
Right.
But training camp stories, I got that really high on my list.
Well, it's I agree that it's all of the things that make, how like a conspiracy theory, a great conspiracy theory has all of these little kernels and elements of truth that are both believable and sometimes real. And like, it's almost impossible to get from that kernel of truth to the actual conspiracy theory at the end of the story. Yeah. But there's a kernel of truth and a framework and a structure that allows for stuff to be believed in and kind of built upon and created. And I agree. The reason Treylon Burks is the story that he is actually has nothing to do with his performance, his injury history, taking a shot to the head against the Eagles, like actually having some signs of good talent and ability. Like, none of that is relevant. It's all about what he represents. And the nexus is what you said, and I think that's the right way to put it. It's the nexus of like all of the stories of the franchise wrapped into what avatar represents all of the things, and it's Treylon Burks. So I understand that. That's just not on him. And also, he plays a position that is high profile. He plays a position that you can get video clips of. It's the combination of every single element that makes it a storyline that gets bigger than it's supposed to be.
And small factor, but big factor. People outside of Nashville know his name. People outside of Nashville don't know Colton Dowell's name. And like Shaker, good point. I'm very interested to see, like, this is an important camp storyline. I'm very interested to see how Callahan values guys who are primarily special teams contributors versus guys who are primarily offense or defense contributors. Because last offseason, he valued offensive and defensive guys, and the special teams struggled early. And I wonder if there's a correction that happens there.
Sure.
The question is, can Colton Dowell justify being on this roster over a receiver who can contribute on offense more? And that's a good conversation point. That's a really interesting thing.
We'll have a really good conversation on Monday's edition of A Football Show where me and mystery guest will project all 53 spots on the roster, and 6 or 7 receivers. As I've said, I think to you at OTAs, 5 of these guys are locked in. It is like 6 players for 1 or 2 spots, of which Xavier Restrepo, Treylon Burks, Colton Dowell are 3 of them. Bryce Oliver, Prochet, and Sheffield, the other 3. There's 6 guys for 2 spots, maybe 1 spot. That's an interesting battle. Just don't go too crazy with thinking it matters too much to the outcomes of the season. Because, again, if Colton Dowell, Xavier Restrepo, and Treylon Burks are starting at any point, you got bigger problems.
And for those of you for those of you guys watching live, please speculate wildly in the comments as to who the mystery guest is going to be Monday.
Ooh, I like
my guess, the ghost of hockey legend Gordie Howe. So just keep discussing who it might be.
Okay. Unironically, was listening to a national NFL podcast, and they were discussing Treylon Burks as if he was the number 2 receiver. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Strange.
Outsized coverage. Anything from special teams. I know we could talk about Winston here as well. I think his injury will get a little overcovered because it's important. So I don't want to go too hard onto this one. It is important, but like you drafted him at 82 to be your long-term answer at safety, knowing he was injured. So it's kind of baked into the assumptions and projections already. So I don't know if that's as like Snead was not.
Yeah.
Cushenberry was not. These are actual injuries that matter to starting players. Winston should be a starter down the road, but that was the plan all along. So I think that one can probably get blown out of proportion to some degree. What about anything on special teams?
Yeah, I think that we know who the punter is going to be. We know who the kicker is going to be. The return game is interesting, but I don't think that's a ridiculous storyline. Like I think it matters to see who wins the return job.
Agree.
The Winston thing that Braden brought up, I think that we are going to spend a little bit too much time asking about if he's ready when we kind of all expected him to need 4 to 6 weeks to talk about winning over a starting job. If he comes out and he's overwhelmingly better than Amani Hooker or Xavier Woods, that's remarkable. Like that is, you got yourself a future top 10 safety level talent to be that good that early coming off of injury. But other than that, I think it'll probably be a little bit overproportioned to talk about his health. Yeah.
I don't know who mentioned this in the comments, so I apologize, but I do think that this is the most interesting one that I don't know which side of the aisle it sort of falls on here, which is the conversation sometimes around Jeffrey Simmons' non-football things.
Sure.
Whether that's locker room conversation, whether that's leadership, whether that's chatting and yapping, talking that mess after the play, whatever it might be, the during the play Jeffrey Simmons coverage. And I am actually very torn on this because I think if you're the highest paid player and supposedly the best player on the team, a lot of this stuff does matter. Sometimes, like getting into a little chatty with Cam Ward after a play, it means nothing. Or maybe there's a little bit of positivity actually there, and the local media can clutch their pearls a little too much about this. So I wanted to ask you, like, where the non-football conversations around Jeffrey Simmons, or I should say non-on the field or on, during the play stuff, how important is that to you? Certainly we can blow it out of proportion in the media at times. Fans do as well, but also it does feel like it matters at his role and his stature on the team. So I'm curious where you are with stuff that kind of is around Jeffrey Simmons that's not like during the play.
Yeah, I will paraphrase my colleague Gentry Estes here, who I think his column that he wrote about this a couple of months ago is probably the correct take here. We know who Jeffrey Simmons is. Jeffrey Simmons has been in Nashville for 7 years now? We know who he is. We know what he does. The conversation around him starts when the season starts. If he plays like he's the Titans' best player, like he's supposed to, who cares about all of this? If he doesn't play like the Titans' best player, as he is supposed to,
then it matters.
Then it matters. But like the conversation around him is not the same as the conversation around T'Vondre Sweat heading into year 2, where there's a lot of projectability there. It's not the same as Cam Ward or any of these rookies. There's a lot of projectability there. We know what Jeffrey Simmons is capable of. And there is no indication that he is not that guy. So let's start talking about Jeffrey Simmons come September. What's the Broncos game? September 8th, September 5th?
You said 8th already, so I'm going to go with 8th.
It's sometime in September.
Well, so you mentioned Sweat. Like if Sweat gets an injury and misses a couple of days, or maybe there's a conversation about like, hey, he didn't have a best offseason or whatever, and I'm just making this stuff up. I'm not reporting any of this. Like that's actually important. Availability, health, stamina. Are you fit, as they say in soccer? All of that is really important stuff for T'Vondre Sweat. I don't think that's a blown out of proportion conversation. It can take on a personal element that is wrong, in my opinion, and was wrong about him prior to the draft. But it's still an important conversation to his availability and his success or failure. Here's the thing, though, and this is PK's issue with Simmons, and I'll paraphrase here, and I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. But there was a game, I want to say, and I'm actually looking it up right now, where I think they gave up like, let me see here. Bear with me. They gave up 267 to Washington on the ground. And he has made comments all season about, you don't run on us. We're the Titans defensive line. You don't run on us. And then when somebody goes for 267, the Colts went for 335. And like, I want to say last year, Zach Moss cooked him as well a couple years ago.
Right.
Like there have been moments where his game and his unit has failed miserably on the field.
Yeah.
And that is when it becomes an issue about all the other stuff that, I agree with you. If they're dominating people and giving up 74 yards rushing to the Buffalo Bills, even though it was a blowout and that's why the numbers were low, then fine. If your unit's doing its job, fine. But if not, then it starts to matter. So I agree with you.
I don't pick on quarterbacks for teams losing. It's a team sport. I don't pick on starting pitchers for losing. It's a team sport. To Eddie's point.
Eddie says, to be fair, they don't run on him. They run around him.
Team sport. Jeffrey Simmons does not unilaterally have the power to single-handedly make it so teams can't run. It is not his fault that his stout group of teammates that he played with when people did not run around the Titans are no longer here. Last vestige of an era.
Jeffrey Simmons apologist, Nick Saban.
Last vestige of an era when people did not run on the Tennessee Titans. People did not run on the Tennessee Titans. We'll see if people can in the future run on the Tennessee Titans.
They did last year. And Jeffrey Simmons is the leader of the defense and plays defensive line. It's important that he acknowledged the fact that they did not stop the run last year.
But I do not require
I got you.
I do not think accountability is a prerequisite for being good at football. It's a prerequisite for a lot of other things that we talk about on this show, but quality of talent.
Sinkers Beverages, the best talent, the most talented liquor store, the most explosive liquor store, definitely not battling for position on a roster. Sinkers Beverages, 4-time liquor store of the year. Always a great leader, always stops the run. Sinkers Beverages. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue as well.
If you're talking to the Sinkers people, ask them what cocktail I should be drinking on the beach this week.
Do you like rum?
Sure.
Pina colada. I find, and this is a very interesting one. I've discovered this later in life, but I really like it for my beach trips. I like a Tennessee Mule on the beach, which is whiskey or bourbon with ginger beer and lime and a lot of ice. And I'll take the 32-ounce Yeti, and I will put about 5-6 shots of bourbon in there and an entire can of ginger beer, which has no alcohol for those that don't know. I don't know if you know that, Nick. Ginger beer is not actual beer. It's just ginger-flavored carbonated water. And you put that in there. You put about a half a lime, cut it like 4 lime slices, squeeze it all in there, drop them in there, bunch of ice, and you don't have to go back to the house. You could just take that Yeti down to the beach at like 8 or 9 a.m. with a book or whatever else you want to do on the beach and just stay there all day. And you never have to go back to the house. And you don't catch a huge buzz.
Whatever else you want to do on the beach.
I don't know, like Frisbee. What else do people do on the beach? I don't know. Soccer is almost impossible. I've tried to play with my daughters on the beach. It's almost impossible to play soccer on the beach. Football, swim, boogie board. I don't know.
It's mostly been wrangling the 20-month-old nephew who keeps running places.
I find I find that to be a very refreshing beverage on the beach. I can't drink a lot of beer anymore because like 2 or 3, and I'm like, like I can't do it. So I don't know if you like whiskey or bourbon. That's a good one. Obviously, you can do the margarita, the self-made margarita. Here's another sneaky one if you like gin. You can get these at Sinkers Beverages. There's an RTD, a ready-to-drink, off the shelf called Long Drink that tastes like Fresca, and it's very dangerous, especially the 10% cans. It's very dangerous, but it's very delicious and light and comes in a can. You can drink it like a beer. The 5% ones I recommend more than the 10% ones, but it basically tastes like Fresca, and it's dangerously smooth. And very refreshing. So there's a lot of good options for you there, Nick.
Good to know. Good to learn.
All courtesy of my guy Grant, who is the expert on all of this stuff, and Joey and T and Emily and all you great folks over there at Sinkers Beverages. So go hang out with Sinkers. Quickly here, I want to, in light of our conversation around absurd headlines and storylines, this started around SEC Media Days, which is that Greg McElroy on his radio show floated the idea that he's spoken to a couple of people who are, quote, in the know, that say that, but remember, if you do not know this, Greg McElroy won a national championship for Nick Saban and has a very close relationship with him. You would think he could just text coach and say, hey, is there any truth to this before I go onto the air? And it turns out that maybe Nick Saban is interested. People in the know say that he's interested in coaching again. Greg McElroy then came back later on I think it was Tuesday and said, I can't believe this took off like it did. So much so that Lane Kiffin commented, Brian Kelly commented, and Kirby Smart commented. Varying degrees of stoking the flames on this.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a real story. However, let's have fun. Sure. And let's do the opposite of what we just did with the Titans and lean into it a little bit.
Okay.
Which is this. What story, because I'm going to include another big name in all of this. 73 years old, Nick Saban. I don't think he's coming back. He's also still got an office at Alabama. It doesn't make much sense for him to come back to some other school. So again, the actual merits of this are not big time. I want to know what's the biggest possible story that Nick Saban could create in college football. I think this is an easy answer.
I did not think that's where you were going, so I prepared an answer for the other question.
Okay, we'll go ahead with the first.
I was going to say, what is the likeliest scenario where I could see Nick Saban back coaching next year? Kalen DeBoer gets canned after 2 years, which doesn't seem likely.
He's not coming back to Bama.
He's not coming back to Bama. The likeliest scenario I could see would be New York Giants hire Marcus Freeman and Nick Saban goes to Notre Dame.
I could see him being a general manager in college football.
Yeah. If it is a head coaching job, Notre Dame would be the one I circle simply because it's a big enough name. It is a big enough tradition. There is some allure there. And Marcus Freeman is the only coach at a quote-unquote blue blood right now who I could see leaving for the NFL at some point and not leaving a program. Like let's say Lincoln Riley gets fired at USC. That's a blue blood. I don't see Nick Saban going to USC.
Well, for those that don't know, he's a Midwest guy as well. So he's
a Midwest guy. Yeah. There are reasonable connections. Notre Dame, he's not going to his alma mater, Kent State, but I could see a West Virginia maybe. Yeah. Who knows? Not to talk about thing that I care about instead of thing that the audience cares about, but I view the Notre Dame job I think people view the Notre Dame job the way that comedians have always viewed the Tonight Show. Of the reason we had all the Conan and Leno and all this feuding stuff, Letterman, was simply because the myth of the Tonight Show mattered so much. The myth of Notre Dame still matters to that generation of coaches.
Because the game, the sport, late night TV, media has evolved beyond that product. College football.
We've evolved.
Notre Dame is still 87.
Tonight Show. Yeah. We've evolved past the need for the Tonight Show, but if you grew up watching the Tonight Show, it matters. We've evolved past the need for Notre Dame, but if you grew up knowing that Notre Dame was the only national brand, that matters.
Well, BYU just kicked their starting quarterback. Now, he actually did something wrong. There was a civil suit around assault, and so Jake Retzlaff was kicked off the. So we're no longer going to have BYU on the show this year, which is sad around college football, but. He was kicked off because of not because of the civil suit, which the charges were dropped, but because of the honor code at BYU, which is premarital sex, which is I am appalled at that happens on college campuses, Nick. Notre Dame is
happen on my college campus, guys.
No,
that's not sarcasm. I was just lame.
Notre Dame is very much no, we're just still playing by 1987 rules. And that's what we want to do because we like 1987. That's what we wanted to do. Yeah. So I agree. I think it's a great analogy, actually. But here's the thing. There is a coach on the hot seat in the SEC that needs to win right away. Forget the fact that I actually think they're going to be pretty good this year. So just forget about this. But he is very much on the hot seat in the SEC. And it would be the most dramatic and exciting and fascinating and wonderfully delicious storyline in the history of SEC football.
We're talking about Kentucky, right?
Yes. Talking about Kentucky. Hugh Freeze is fired. Nick Saban becomes the Auburn coach is the only story worth writing if you're Nick Saban. It's the only one.
Oh, I think that better full circle is Brian Kelly gets fired and Saban returns to LSU. Like, that's a funnier full circle.
It's maybe to you, it's not better for me. Going to Auburn in a state where he is the god of Alabama people is the most delicious thing that could possibly happen. Now, the only thing that I might put above this, if I want to continue this story, because who is really Nick Saban's nemesis in college football? Who's the actual character who is also 12 years younger and also sitting on a TV set on Saturday mornings?
It's Urban Meyer.
Urban Meyer is his nemesis. So if we really want to bring this cinematic storyline to an absurd close, it is Hugh Freeze is fired at Auburn. Nick Saban takes the Auburn job. Kalen DeBoer is fired at Alabama. Urban Meyer is the Alabama head football coach. And Nick Saban and Urban Meyer are coaching against each other in the same state. It could not get any better than that from a media perspective.
Hear me out. Mike McDaniel fired for another mediocre season in Miami. Nick Saban right on back to the Dolphins, you guys.
Okay.
That would be funny.
Urban Meyer, Jacksonville, question mark? I just think Urban Meyer wants to beat Nick Saban in a national championship game. And I don't think Urban Meyer has any desire to come back to coaching. At 61 years old, though, he's still got a lot left in the tank, to be honest. And he's done this before many times, just as Saban has. I don't think Urban Meyer wants to come back to coaching, but I think if Nick Saban did, Urban Meyer would come back just to beat him in a national championship game, which the pettiness I'm here for.
And could.
And absolutely could. One of the only people that could, if Dabo can do it.
Urban Meyer, I think we have kind of forgotten how important he was to college football.
I have not.
No, I think that just the general populace has kind of remembered the last 5 years of his tenure instead of just how good he was as a coach. Dude was every bit Saban's equal for most of their careers.
I don't disagree with you, and I think when Auburn hired Hugh Freeze, my whole thing was, why take the risk on an unproven commodity? You take the risk of putting your entire campus in danger with the guarantee. The only reason you put the women on your campus in danger is with the guarantee of success, which is Urban Meyer. But I think the reason Urban Meyer's story is different is because he's made it that way. He deserves to be treated in a certain way. He is a lying scumbag, and I think Urban Meyer deserves to have his legacy tarnished, even though I agree with you on the field. He is among the best coaches in the history of the game, and the only one that I would really, truly put on the same level as Saban during this era. Kirby's kind of getting close, but I would put Urban as the only one that's on the same level. And I guess they did play technically back-to-back SEC championship games. They went 1-1 against each other in 08 and 09. And then in 14, Urban Meyer beat him in the Sugar Bowl, the very first playoff upset where Ohio State goes on to win the national championship. So they have played, but never in a national championship game.
But it's so much harder to get them to play in a national championship now. If we could go back to the BCS format where they can both go 12-0. Yeah.
I mean, look, it's not, but it's also not a hard formula. If you put Nick Saban and Urban Meyer at one of, let's say, 8 to 10 programs, they're going to end up in the national championship game. USC, Texas, you guys know who they are. Yeah. The 5 or 6 or 7 big ones in the SEC, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, etc.
Put on your guess what Urban would do glasses and guess what Urban would do if Nick Saban replaced Sharon Moore.
He would murder Marcus Freeman to get the Notre Dame job.
Oh, so you don't think he would just say, Ryan Day, you're my offensive coordinator again?
No, I don't think Ohio State. I don't know if there's too much there. There's too much Zach Smith hanging over Urban Meyer.
Sure.
I think he goes back. I think the only job he would really want is Notre Dame. I think similarly to your point about Urban, but Saban. Urban grew up a Notre Dame fan, I believe. So there's a little difference there. But
it's Johnny Carson, guys. It's all Johnny Carson.
This is Leno versus Letterman. Saban versus Meyer. Minus all the controversy, I suppose. So we'll see.
Because you're saying, okay, I'm not going to get into Letterman controversies. We don't have to discuss this.
You can.
20 seconds left in the show. No, I'm just saying there are more similarities there of things that happened off the field.
Yes, I'm aware. I'm not as aware as you are, but I got a loose understanding. But I think it's Letterman is the not only just the exact same time frame, the 90s and the aughts, but among the greatest, most productive, right?
Sure.
So, all right. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, Nick. Thanks for jumping on and hanging out with us. We do appreciate it. We've got some SEC stuff for you coming up a little bit later on Thursday on the YouTube page and on the podcast app. I'm going to be have a long interview kind of recapping more in detail the actual football side of SEC Media Days. So make sure you check that out. All the other great Titan shows across the network. You got the Paul Kaharski podcast. You got Music City Audible from those guys as well. So make sure you check that out. There has been some changes with the Hot Read Pod. So we've got some new stuff planned for you. We're still working through the options on that, but we're going to have something new for you. So stay tuned on that. Don't destroy that feed or unfollow. Just keep all the notifications turned on. We'll tell you what's going on as well. So I'm going to go raft in the Allegheny Mountains and take the kids for some walks in Appalachia. You enjoy whatever it is you're doing down there on the coast.
I'm doing real things. There's real stuff happening.
No, not real stuff is what you should do on vacation.
Yeah.
It should be not real stuff. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thanks for being around. Thanks for jumping into the comment section. Write a review. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Sign up for Good Journalism, Tennessean.com, so you can read all of Nick Suss's excellent work there. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.